I have really enjoyed working with you. It's been a short time, but you're so generous and kind and clever. And that's why I've invited you here today to talk to us about the startup space in Melbourne. And we're really excited to hear your insights. So I will pass the mic to you. There you go. That's yours.
Thank you.
Oh, very nice. I like it. Thank you. We didn't even rehearse that, guys. So Camilla's going to talk to us about the startup space and from her context as a recruiter in the graduate space. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for that lovely intro. And thank you very much to everyone who's joining again during your probably lunch breaks right now. Hopefully you'll go away with a bit more insight on the startup world. So yeah, I just give a bit of a quick intro, but just to kind of cover what I'm gonna go over in the next sort of 30 minutes with you. There's quite a bit to cover, so I'm gonna crack on. Intro of who I am, obviously important. What's a startup? And then looking at the sort of industries that we've helped, and particularly what we've seen in terms of particular areas that are thriving, especially during this strange time. And then we'll look at the benefits of joining a startup, some success stories that we've got, which are really cool and exciting to share. And then what generally we've seen with our expertise kind of startups tend to look for. There'll be a few buzzwords we'll go through in a bit more depth, and then a few of our best tips on how to prepare an application. So cracking on, who am I and who's GiveAGradAGo? I'm Camilla. I am the country manager for GiveAGradAGo. So I started back at GiveAGradAGo in 2013. I was pretty much a recent graduate myself, and I had headed to London. I actually wanted to sing. Obviously, you've got to pay rent and stuff, so that didn't happen. Did it on the side, and I joined GiveAGradAGo, not knowing much really about recruitment, but I loved speaking to people and helping people. And 7 years later, I progressed with them. They started, there were 5 people at that time, and now there's 30 of us, and we launched our services in Australia this year, which is super exciting. So in terms of GiveAGradAGo, I gave a bit of an intro to it, but we are specialists in graduate recruitment and early careers. So that's helping you find your first role, but also your second and third, and kind of up to 3 to 5 years of experience. And it's all about, you know, we connect you with different businesses. We're not sector specific and we're not role specific. Our speciality is just that kind of junior level, and it's a completely free service. So you know, at the very least, we'll just chat to you about your resume, give you some pointers there and kind of advice on different avenues you can take. But also, if we do find a role that's really going to fit you, we'll prepare you for the interview. We'll make sure your application's ready, and we'll go all the way through, you know, contracts, and it might be your first time securing that kind of part of a role. And so we help you through all of that through to kind of first aid jitters and beyond. So that's what we do in a bit of a nutshell. And a bit of history that I thought is kind of interesting is that we actually launched in 2009, which is actually when, you might remember, some of you, the global financial crisis was in full swing. And what we were seeing then, as is the same now, is a lot of graduates, you know, people trying to launch their careers in graduate programs, big corporations. And there was a bit of a shift in terms of the number of, you know, graduates they could really take on board. And so what we did see is a lot of smaller businesses who were looking to grow fast and do it in a bit of a more of a cost-effective way. And so our whole role was bridging that gap. So helping recent grads find these amazing new companies and helping them in, you know, hiring pushes that they might be doing for the first time. So that's kind of how we came about. And I'm excited to say that 11 years on, we've launched over 4,000 careers, and that's been across 15 industries. And we've helped over 800 businesses expand their teams. And I'll go into the different types of industries that we have helped a little bit further down the line. So yeah, that's hopefully makes it a bit clearer about what we've been doing, and I've been with us, for 7 years. So that's really flown by. So the whole point you'll probably all hear is what's a startup? And it is very much, I know, a big buzzword. You've probably all seen it everywhere. There's a huge amount of content out there. If you were to Google it, what's a startup? There's so many different ideas and thoughts. And so I wanted to just highlight 2 important factors that we find that are interesting about what a startup is. And that's number 1, a startup focuses on a product or a service that's solving a solution in its market. So what you will see are a lot of startups are disrupting the markets that they're in, especially in tech. And then the second exciting part, which is what we all want to hear, is that they have the ability to scale. And I'll go through kind of the stages of a startup. So if you are interested in entering that sort of scene, you can understand where your startup, the company you're going to join, what path of their journey they're on, to have a bit more understanding of where they're at. But an exciting thing about startups, as I've got in this big, nice red circle, is it's huge, it's thriving. It's creating nearly 3 trillion in value. And if you are interested to learn more about what's happening right now globally in startups, and you'll read a bit about how Melbourne is actually growing hugely as a hub for the startup ecosystems. There's a really cool link I can send, which is from the Startup Genome, which is like a big policy advisory board to governments that collects all this amazing data about startup ecosystems and advises them how to build those. So so I thought, as I said, I'll go through the 3 stages of a startup. And also something to highlight are a couple really cool startups that came out of the last financial crisis, thinking about a product or service that is solving a solution. Is actually Airbnb came out last financial crisis, and that was because rents were really high in San Francisco. You might really know this, and they just put a mattress in a spare room, and that's how that started. That's done well. And also Groupon, if you know the deals website, obviously deals were already around, but during the crisis, they started that because it was a really great way to help companies put all their deals in one place, and they've done an amazing thing. So both innovators in their market and have continued to dominate in what they're doing, which is really cool. So here we go. So first stage. Now, you will probably hear pre-seed, seed, post-seed, like anything seed. Basically, this is anything. The first stage, this is the early venture of a startup, and this is the pre-series A. So basically, this stage is all about evaluating the risk. So you've got the idea, you've got the product, and then it's evaluating, lining up all the evidence to justify that it can grow. So that's building the product, obviously, and demonstrating that it fits in the market, prove that there's people who are going to buy it, the sales fit with what you're trying to do in terms of growth, and there is a team in place to execute that. I thought a good way to kind of explain these 3 stages is put a bit of so basically years ago, I thought a really good idea would be to have a jingle app, like I'm loving it, like McDonald's. So basically you can make your own jingle really easily. And I'm sure it's possibly, I haven't checked the market, it might already be out there, but I thought I could use that as an example, and feel free, if you think it's a good idea, run with it, if it's not already out there. But pre-series A for that jingle app would be me building the product, and I'd be looking into the market. It would probably be quite a small team. I'd have probably like 1 salesperson, someone in marketing to help, someone building it, and founder. So quite like a skeleton ship, basically. So I would be lining up all the evidence, checking, is this app going to fly? Then we move into Series A. So I've proven all of that's actually been viable. People are loving it in the market. It is getting so many downloads. I'm getting articles posted about it. Marketing's awesome. So I have substantial evidence that this is actually a viable product. It's people want to buy it, people are excited about it, people are using it. And so I've managed to get a Series A investor who believes in the company and is going to help it pump money in to rapidly scale. So Series A, which you probably would have heard of a lot, you might see people say, oh yeah, Series A funding just gone through. That's where you're in a good stable position, and it could be quite a long period, and there's been a lot of groundwork before to prove that that startup is going to be viable. So I'm pretty pleased. My Jingle app has got backing, and then anything after that, and the reason I've broken this down to 3 stages is because there are so many different ways that people describe different stages, and this is just the best way to think about it. So you will also maybe have seen a startup saying, yeah, we've just gone through Series B funding, Series D, Z, whatever you want to call it. All of that is awesome news. It's basically people are loving my Jingle app. It's already proven. I've already got I've got a whole kind of team on board, and now I've got even more financial backing from venture capital firms or private equity firms, which means that I can help it grow faster and become the #1 Jingle app in the world. So that's good news for me. So hopefully that helps in terms of the different stages. It's quite important, if you are going to be interested in joining a startup, to be aware of where your potential company is in that stage, and they should be really open sharing that with you so that you know the risks that can be implied with that. And that's something that we are really open with any people that we speak to in terms of companies that we are hiring for, just so you can go in with eyes wide open. So just to go back a little bit in terms of the industries that we work with. So as I said, we have helped over 15 industries, and you've got on the left-hand side here in this nice, beautiful infographic, all the kind of traditional, banking and finance, PR and communications, energy, sustainability. And then on the right-hand side, you've got all the kind of sexy tech sectors, I like to call them, which actually, personally, having worked for GiveAGradAGo the last 7 years, I've seen the rise of these companies in particular, and those companies that are really disrupting their markets. And what we have actually seen, particularly during lockdown, is the rise of companies within fintech and edtech. If you look at, for example, we had whole universities, GA, going completely online. You've got whole universities as well taking everything they said would take months to go online, actually managing to do that within a matter of weeks and days. And that's through the edtech sector, through all those e-learning resources. So a lot of these industries have had to react really quickly to what's happening, which has only developed the tech within their sector and allowed for people to take bigger risks and more kind of encouragement to invest in those companies. And in terms of who we've placed in those markets, actually 30% of our placements were within fintech, which is quite interesting during the lockdown period. So understanding that you all are kind of coming from a data science or software engineering or UX background, there's heaps of exciting opportunities within those areas that they will be looking for your expertise to grow their teams. So you're in the right place, which is good. Of course, I will be answering any questions towards the end if I am going through things quite quickly, trying to cover ground. So if you've got any more questions about different sectors, please feel free to ask away, and I'll answer those at the end. So let me just take a sip of water. So benefits of joining a startup. Now, I am a bit biased because I've come from a startup myself, and actually what I hadn't mentioned earlier on is that during my 7 years with GiveAGradAGo, I did have a small hiatus of about 9 months or so. I did a bit of part-time, and I had the opportunity to try and set up my own company, which was actually trying to open up a sparkling wine bar. So if you want any tips on sparkling wine, I'm a big fan. It was the most incredible experience to really understand how it works in terms of putting, you know, the founder hat on and sussing out the market and understanding how all different areas work. And I actually learned so much, but ended up coming back to GiveAGradAGo. My heart was with it, and yeah, ending up here. But what that did give me was also an insight of a super startup. And from GiveAGradAGo, I'd started when there were 5 and seen it grow to 30. And there's so many different benefits of joining a small team. Firstly, what I do want to highlight is that, oh, let me just move. I realize that that's covered. There you go. That you actually have the opportunity to get pretty comfortable with being uncomfortable, which gives you huge scope to grow. So getting out of your comfort zone is an enormous benefit to have early on in your career. You can deal with situations that you might not normally get when you are in a bit more of, I guess, a structured environment. Things might get thrown at you that you just have to crack on with, and it might be incredibly stressful and full on, and you might, you know, go have a quick cry in the toilet potentially, but actually you get home that day and you're like, wow, I managed to get through that, and I might have done this in a different way, but I learned from that. So getting out of your comfort zone is a really amazing thing that you get to do, and actually learning on the job as well. And you'll be surrounded by, and I usually say you'd be rubbing shoulders, but you'd be virtually rubbing shoulders with different heads of departments, with founders, and usually actually in bigger ecosystems as it is. So for example, there's a couple of companies we're working with at the moment who are part of a really awesome tech accelerator hub called Stone and Chalk. And if you join one of those companies, then you actually are entering a bigger startup ecosystem, and you've got the opportunity to speak to different CTOs, to see what's going on in different markets. You're also just more involved in webinars and discussions, and yeah, so it's joining a bigger system within it. And also what's really, really cool is there's so much fluidity in terms of your progress. So there's more opportunity to be a bit flexible. So if you do join a company and you've got a few different skills, especially, I understand, you know, a lot of you are making career changes right now, having done your course, and you might have all these really valuable skills before that you could utilize in other projects, which is really exciting. And there's a lot of scope there for you to get involved with that and diversify your skills. So actually, off the back of a few of those benefits, I wanted to share some really amazing success stories that we've seen. And these are just a few highlighted, kind of asking the rest of the team what's been going on. One of the biggest success stories I love is with a company called Receipt Bank. So I don't know if you would have heard of them, but they are incredibly famous in the fintech world. They were in like the top 10 startups in the world, and they started as a company around the same time as us. And we actually placed their first hire, so number 3, back in 2011. And that was back in the UK. And Receipt Bank has now grown internationally. They have an office in Sydney, and they're an internationally recognized fintech company. And that same person ended up moving to Australia to head up the APAC side of the business, a bit like myself. And they're now the head of growth at another one of the top 10 UK startups. And that's in quite a short space of time, really, to be doing that sort of growth, and with a company that's grown from being the third person to hundreds. So there's real opportunity there to scale up with the company. Another really cool story that our head of our tech hiring back in the UK was telling me was he placed the first hire with a systems integrator startup last year, pretty much exactly to now. And for that person, it was actually a complete career change. And since then, in that company, they've placed 9 graduate developers with us. And that first hire that we placed in their first tech role, basically in that environment, they're now in a managerial position. So if you prove yourself, and I've seen this across the board, there's another really awesome example that I haven't got on a slide, but I'll just tell you, which is a digital marketing agency that I worked with I've worked with them since 2014, and I placed their first 2 interns there. So they were starting on a 3-month internship paid with the view to go permanent, and they both nailed it, and they both are heading up their departments. They're like head of SEO growth for EMEA, and the other one ended up moving to New York, and they've continued to grow. And that's so exciting, because at the time, you know, they were taking a chance. They didn't know how it was going to go in terms of those 3 months, and they've become incredibly integral to how that agency has grown internationally. And finally, even more recently, we've been working with a disruptive tech consultancy and placed their first hire within just a team of 3 just before lockdown. And that's still at a junior level, and they've managed to take on responsibilities from day 1. And now they've played a really crucial role during lockdown. So that's another really cool story in terms of you're not restricted by being a junior, because there's more of a, I guess, an even playing field. If you've got the skills, there's the opportunity there to really delve in. And that's not to say that can always be, you know, what you want. It's more if you do want that opportunity, and if you put your hand up and you prove, yes, I can do X, Y, Z, then they're more open to being like, cool, show us what you got. Let's do this.
Yeah, so, and I think just on your point, and to give you a 5-second break for your voice.
Oh yes, sorry.
Excellent job. I'm so happy. Thank you. Is that for, you know, everyone joining us today as career changers, you may be perceived as juniors in your new field, but you all come in with soft skill sets. So you're all better at teamwork than a recent university graduate. And you all have client-facing skill sets and customer service skill sets. And, you know, you've all had to deal with logistics and planning and time management and difficult teammates and all of the things that make us, you know, more senior in our careers and our profession. You have those skill sets to bring along with your new technical skill sets. So I think it's so excellent to see how many amazing placements yourself and GiveAGradAGo have been able to achieve in the startup space. I know one of the questions coming through in the Q&A is at which part of the process, you know, which series is most likely to be hiring, particularly with juniors. But to see that you are able to place juniors in startups because they're a place where you can still grow and they can invest with you is very exciting for us.
Good. I hadn't realized. I was like, how long have I been talking?
Not very long.
Okay, good.
Fine. No, I just, you know, I'm used to also talking and I'm like, oh my God, my voice is going to fall out of my throat.
I know.
But I jump in and give you a break.
Yeah.
I'm very keen to keep listening forever.
Well, there's just a couple more things I was going to talk about, which was generally what we've seen over the last decade, what startups tend to look for. And if that matches kind of what you feel you kind of bring. And then also our best ways that we've found people have been applying. And there's a couple examples I want to share of people who really impressed me recently, just with different ways that they've approached the kind of job market. So I'm gonna run through like a few buzzwords that I think that we all know very well. So what do startups look for? Entrepreneurial spirit, which is one of those things which is, you know, you don't have to necessarily have started your own company or, you know, have even like a side hustle, as we like to call. That's a nice buzzword that we've heard a lot. But it's actually just having a real interest in emerging business, emerging technology, having, like, whether you keep up with industry news or you are part of different communities. I know there's a lot of amazing entrepreneurship schemes here. So it's just being part of that network and being interested in how a company operates and how it starts, and having that passion and enthusiasm. I also say a self-start attitude. Again, that is on lots and lots and lots of job descriptions, but it is really true. In a startup, at points, there might not be that person or manager being able to be like checking in all the time, or having such set goals, and so you might have to set those yourself. And I actually thought a really good exercise, if anyone wants to do this at some point this week, in terms of that self-start attitude, is thinking about and making a list of what motivates you, what gets you up in the morning, what's going to help you finish, what helps you finish a project, what keeps you focused, and next one, disciplined in terms of what you're doing. And I think that's a really good thing to be aware of in terms of how you are, and a good thing to recognize. And also, I think it's just nice to check in on that sort of thing, and realize how great you are at keeping yourself motivated. Varied skill set, as I said earlier, which I'm really glad, everyone, you mentioned as well. You guys will have this in abundance, not only the technical skills, but actually the soft skills and that previous, professional experience. That means that you can really tap into a lot of different areas within the company. That gives you a good kind of overview of different parts of the business, whether it's operations. You may be joining in an engineering set, or in data set, or design, but that all really interlinks so much with whether it's the customer support side, and understanding what's going on with clients, and how the product or service is being interacted on that side. And passion, heaps and heaps and heaps of passion. You will not survive in a startup if you're not passionate about what they're doing, because you will really need to be dedicated and focused, and you might need to work long hours at some points, but because you're so excited about what they're doing, then you want to be a part of that. I mean, I woke up this morning at 5 a.m. I couldn't sleep and scrolled LinkedIn for a really long time because I love it. Just seeing what people are saying, seeing what new jobs are out there, different like industry news. So yeah, and you'll get a feel for that when you research about the company and the industry. And I've touched on this, but adaptability and flexibility, again, happy to work, potentially longer hours, or in terms of progression as they grow as a company, being a bit more flexible with what avenue you're happy to kind of go down and where your skills are going to lie. You might need to delve into a project that's a bit out of your comfort zone for a bit to help the company. So just being open to that. And interests and achievements. Like, your personality is so important. And actually, I had a great chat with one of you yesterday, Benjamin, and we were talking about your online portfolio that actually shows that you had bunnies and you were into Star Wars, and I loved it. And it just, your personality completely came through that. So that was awesome. And also achievements, like, sing them out, like shout them out loud. You want people to see what you've worked really hard for, so you should be proud of those. So very quickly, I will just go through a few top tips of the best way to prepare an application, and just to go off the back of your achievements, like, show off your skills, have your technical skills at the top in bold, what you're good at, what you've learned. And actually, I find a really good way to immediately set you apart and show that you've really taken time into your application is also grading yourself. If you've got all these skills, it sometimes is hard to understand, okay, are you advanced in all of those. And then if you see something on a job description that you're like, I'm really good at that, then put it advanced at the top and just make it incredibly clear as possible. You spent time learning those skills. You want to make sure the hiring manager sees them. And also, when I say spell it out here, I mean, if you're going for a UX design role in a prop tech company, spell it out at the top of your resume. I am incredibly excited to be joining a prop tech company, and just make it really, really clear, because coming in at more of a entry level, or might be your first role within that industry, you might not have all the experience behind it that says, oh yeah, they're really excited about prop tech. So you really want to just spell it out the best way you can. And I had someone apply with me recently, and everywhere, all over their CV was, I'm so excited about joining a startup. I'm incredibly entrepreneurial. I'm a self-starter. And all the way through it, I was like, wow, they really want to join a startup. And lo and behold, I called them and they only wanted to join a startup. But I loved that it really set them apart, and it made my life easier, because I was like, right, I've got to call them straight away. And linking in with that, do your research. So and that's where we help you, if you are going for a role with us, or if you're looking for one online, have a look into that company. What are they talking about recently? And connect with their hiring manager. Right now, I'm not going to hide from the fact that there are a lot of people looking for jobs. That's the reality. And you need to find a way to stand out. And the best thing to do, and a few of you have done this with me actually, and so I haven't been able to reach all of you yet, I will, but you've connected with me and you've highlighted your application. I had someone send me an email the other day that said they emailed and then they called me straight away. But they put in the email, hire me. They changed their email address to hire me GiveAGradAGo, which I hadn't seen anyone do that before. And they just quickly put it together, which I thought that was really cool. And it made them stand out. So, there's all these different ways that you can get yourself noticed. And it's just doing that little tailoring and that little tweak that's going to put you above the rest. And that's where we help you, and who supports you, and those, that's all the kind of tips and tricks that we can help you with. So I think I have stopped talking finally.
I feel terrible. I feel like I made you self-conscious of your presentation being a presentation.
No, not at all. Thank you so much. It's funny doing it virtually because you're so used to noise. You're
feedback, of course.
Yeah. But any questions, let me know.
Yeah, there are questions. That was so amazing and so helpful. And I think particularly for me, I love your emphasis on, you're getting virtual claps in the chat. Virtual claps for Camilla.
Oh,
passion and enthusiasm to overcome a lack of specific experience, I think, is definitely an excellent piece of advice. And that tailoring and showing your flexibility and adaptability, which I know all of our grads certainly have, because they've just, changed their life in 12 weeks. So pretty impressive. Thank you. Questions in the chat, and everybody, if you have more questions, please write them in and I'll make sure I read them out to Camilla, so we grab all of this on the recording. So in terms of the rounds of funding, so pre-seed and then Series A, Series A through Z, in your experience, which of those would be most likely to be hiring?
Well, I mean, pre-seed, probably not as much with the first stage, just because they need to keep their costs down. They don't have a huge influx of money yet. But that also, it's a different situation. They might have a whole load of money behind them personally, already prepared. I mean, as they get more rounds of funding, they're going to be able to hire more. But if you look at each stage, they have to prove that they can operate, that they do have the ability to scale. So increasingly, later on, but it's no reason that they wouldn't be hiring at each stage.
Yeah, really helpful. So rule of thumb, later rounds of funding more likely to be
Yeah.
hiring because they've got that extra revenue not revenue but funding coming in. And then but at all stages they're going to need technical skill sets outside of their own.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So next question comes from Vasi, a UX grad. She was wondering, how do startups support juniors to excel in their roles, and how do they handle failures, being that they are small teams?
How do they help them excel? So quite interesting. Like I said, and thank you for the question. Good question. Again, there's lots of different ways. I mean, in terms of, so for example, with a company recently that I've been helping look for an app developer, they're at a very early stage. They are pre-seed, and the person they're looking for is at a junior level, and they don't have the infrastructure to have a full training program or even a direct mentor. But what they are offering and what they do have is a huge network of expertise. And so what they're looking at is putting aside a couple hours a week where the successful person can actually have direct like one-on-one mentorship with a different CTO from a different industry. And they've also got, again, being part of a wider startup ecosystem, there's the scope to engage with other companies on Slack. We've seen lots of different ways that they help you excel. In terms of having kind of on the job support, so you'll be working really closely with other people in the tech team and have the opportunity to kind of learn directly off them. But also sometimes they do also offer a bit of budget to have like external training, and if it's not working out, and in terms of, I guess, the failure side of it, you know, a lot of these companies will be really frank from the get-go, and we do work with a lot of startups on like a placement to permanent structure, which is, we find, a really good way for you to figure out if it's the right company and industry for you. So you may start on a 3-month paid placement, like I mentioned earlier, a few people had, and then in that time figuring out, okay, is this the right environment for me, and having those check-ins, and then that sit down and deciding if it's going to turn into a permanent result. So at the very least, you'd gain some amazing experience in a small team. And obviously the best case scenario is it does work out, you love it, they love you, and you know, you live happily ever after.
I think too, how do startups handle failures? In my experience of small businesses and startups, they actually handle failure a lot better than, say, a structured organization where there's policies and procedures and manuals and teams that you should have gone and asked and you should have referred to. They're much more agile, they're much quicker. So they say, we'll try it, and if it doesn't work, great, we'll try something else, because they're figuring out the best way and you can be a part of that journey. So in my experience of those types of businesses, failure is par for the course, and it's an excellent teacher. And I think, you know, there is that real startup mentality of fail and fail fast. Because the faster you can fail, the quicker we can find the right way to do it. So I think they really embrace failure, in my experience, much more than a larger structured organization does.
Yeah. And actually, just off the back of that as well, the investment that they're putting into bringing you on board and training you and taking you under their wing, it's in their best interest that you are a success and you do stay in that team, because it's far more detrimental to them to take someone on that isn't going to quite work, especially in a small team. One person, it can really disrupt a whole small environment like that. So usually, they will try different ways to make it work. So yeah, I agree.
Absolutely. So a question here around UX roles at the moment, and wondering on your insight into junior UX jobs in the broader market, but also in the startup market at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of UX roles, to be honest, we're currently not working on any live right now, but they are around, and they are definitely, companies are still needing that design side. And, there's one of the roles we are working on, which is the app development position, which is involving some UX design, and they will be kind of communicating with UX consultants in that team. I think, as I said earlier, kind of that broader, the tech space is definitely where there are a lot of positions we're seeing. As we're not role specific, what we've seen is mostly design and tech and account management roles are out there in the market. I wouldn't say in the current climate there's been a considerable decline in that area. We're just unfortunately actively not handling any right now, but that can always change.
And we'll keep an eye on it, I'm sure. So questions here about finding information on startups. One question around where can we find out at what funding stage a startup is at? Which I know I go to Slattery's, I go to the government websites, I go to Launch Vic to find out what stage startups are at. What other resources would you recommend?
Yeah, there's a couple other, I was going to suggest, if you are interested in keeping on top of what's happening with the latest tech news, you can keep on top of the AFR has a really good tech sector. You've also got, like I mentioned earlier, Stone and Chalk, which is actually a co-working space that we are in. They have a lot of amazing information on new startups and what's happening there. They put a lot of really amazing content out. And same with Startup Vic as well. They've got some really cool online resources. You can also have, there's some that you can get kind of, not all the information, but Crunchbase tends to tell you what's happening. And also if you actually type in a company into Google and then go to news, which I only found this out like a few years, I feel like it's something I should have known for a really long time. But it will highlight anything about that company in the news, which is also a really good way to prepare for an interview as well. So you can see what's going on with them in the industry.
Yes, very good way to find out in some of those bigger organizations where there's going to be a cultural issue. Anyway, I digress. So the next question is, if I'm initializing my search for startups, is there a specific place I should look?
Yes. So there's lots of different boards. We've got ours, which has a few on it. So the GiveAGradAGo.com/au. But there's areas like Breakout Careers. They've got some really cool, that's where there's a lot of startup jobs posted, as well as AngelList Careers as well. That's a really good hub. And again, Startup Vic and Launch Vic, they have jobs boards there. So the more, I would just suggest, if you are really interested in the space, we try and put stuff out there, but if you connect with these sort of ecosystems, there's so much content coming out across LinkedIn that's actually, now that we're into the rhythm more, we're a few months deep into this virtual space, they're coming along leaps and bounds. There's so much online, and there's a lot of tech hubs as well. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but I can send them along if it's helpful in the other links. I'm sure you've already got them out there, but lots of kind of online groups that post their jobs and share those as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. Once you sign up to like one newsletter, or maybe even the Startup Vic Slack channel, which is a great resource, it all kind of snowballs and you find all the other resources. But those are some great ones that you've mentioned, like Breakout Careers. That's very helpful. The other question is, how do we identify it is a startup? Is it a time-based thing, a team size-based thing? What's your rule of thumb?
Oh, that's such a good question. like what I said earlier, and I was trying to put together, how do I explain what a startup is? Because there's so much content out there. It's because it won't necessarily be, like, we could still be regarded as a startup, that we're about a team of 30.
Yep.
We've been around for about 10 years. I guess it's not getting too stuck on whether it is a startup or not, but more the idea of what is it that they're bringing new to the table? How are they disrupting their market? I think that's quite an exciting way to look at it, because if you do think of it like that, then all the kind of factors that they're looking for in terms of being really passionate about what they're doing, and that ability to be flexible because it's potentially a new idea, a new service, they might be innovators in their market. I guess it's looking at it from that side, if that helps answer that question.
I agree. Like, General Assembly was considered a startup until we were acquired by Adecco last year. So at sort of 10 years old, we stopped being a startup because we got purchased. So, you know, it doesn't really matter if they are a startup or not. It's that mindset, and does it align with your own? So speaking about passion, this question from Mark, who's a data scientist, says, about passion, should it satisfy your passion or what they do or what you do? So his example is, if you're working in a gambling company that's not really an industry that you are passionate about, but you get to work on these amazing data sets, is that the type of passion that we're talking about?
That's a really good question. Thank you. I think that when you are going for a role, and the gambling is an interesting one because that will be more important and less important for people. You need to think about, again, going back to what motivates you and what will get you up in the morning. And a lot of companies will want to, and they are increasingly focusing on this, is what are their values and what are your values and whether they align. And that will pretty much should get sussed out through the interview. So yes, if you are going to be really excited in the data sets, but you're not that interested in gambling, they'll probably figure it out during that interview. And if they don't see that, then there's probably something wrong. So you just want to maybe do another exercise of thinking about what are your values. That's a really good thing that I like to share with the people that we work with, is what is going to get you up in the morning, and what are your values, what's important to you, because you shouldn't have to compromise on that.
Yeah, I think so too. And with data or software engineering, while less than UX, while you may be working away on code in either of those careers, if you can't relate, or if relating what you do to the overall business goals doesn't inspire and motivate you, life's just less fun. Like, I don't think any of you went through a career change to end up in an organization that doesn't align with who you are. So it's not to say necessarily that your first job after General Assembly is going to be working for NASA, sending astronauts to the moon, and that's your deepest passion. But if you find a space like Camilla has at GiveAGradAGo, where she works supporting people to find the careers they love, and obviously you love it, and you wake up at 5:30, you may need some help, but beside that, jump on LinkedIn and you love it and it lights you up, and look how much joy and energy you're giving to us at lunchtime on a Wednesday. If that's how you feel about going to work is a lot easier. So whether you are coding and the coding brings you joy, but you can align that with the strategic business goals, that's where life gets really good. And that's where you're your best, you're the best colleague you can be, you're the best leader you can become in those sorts of organizations as well.
Yeah, totally agree.
All right, final question that we have here is, how would onboarding differ in a startup as opposed to a large global organization?
Yeah, good question. And again, it's going to vary. You might be the first hire, you might be third or whatever down the line. It can be either Actually, there's a really good article that I might share after this that someone shared with me about being in a different stage of a startup and what that might look for with onboarding. So pre-seed might be, here's the budget, day one, go get your laptop, go get yourself sorted. You know, we're all sat around a table. You're checking, obviously they're checking in with you all the time because you're there, but it's not like a set structure. And then next stage might be, okay, you turn up and your computer's all there and you've got a pen and you've got like a little map out of what you can expect the first few weeks to be. And then further down the line, if you're, you know, not necessarily the first hire, then you've got a far more structured environment. But I mean, from our experience in our team, as I've seen it, as we've grown over the last 7 years I've been there, is we've created far more of like a structure. Once you start, there's far more of a clear progression plan. There's the opportunity to have, at the start, we have like, you know, daily check-ins, and then it goes to weekly check-ins and then monthly. So we've managed to incorporate that more. Whereas when I started, it was a bit more on the job, but then I was actually sat next to my MD, which was scary. So it varies, and I'll send you that link so you can share it, because it's actually a really funny article as well.
I would love that.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, like onboarding in a startup is less likely to be, here are the fire exits. This is, you know, this is our cultural values. Those things haven't been formalized yet. You're a core part of helping build that. But it is much more like, hey, here's a laptop, let's do some work. So there is that excitement and that ability to lean into it. And if that is something that excites you, definitely startups are a great place to look. And if that's something that terrifies you out of your pants, let's go for more traditional organizations for you, I think is kind of the summary of your excellent session. The other thing that I deeply want to thank you for as a career coach of the awesome people joining us today is setting everyone some homework. So Camilla has set us the homework of, and I agree with this, creating a list of what motivates you, what gets you up in the morning, what helps you finish a project and keep you focused on that project, and how do you stay self-disciplined? What have you tried? What works? Is it just the joy of the project? What is recreatable that helps you stay on track? And if you consider your values, I'd like you to create a list of what are certain yeses for you. So if there was the opportunity to work with, you know, medical tech or, you know, animals or something like that, if those are definite yeses for yourself, and what is a definite no? Do you not want to work for a company that doesn't have equal gender representation or does work with animals like me? Are you deeply allergic to every animal, sadly, and therefore you can't work with them? So figure out where your values lie and where your passions can really be ignited. And it really does help with that job search, because the research into the company doesn't become a hurdle. It becomes a joy. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just going to put this here. If you want to connect, this really cool jazzy thing we've done, you can just scan the code.
Everybody, whip out your phones and scan and connect with the beautiful and amazing Camilla. You have wrapped this up with a tidy 2 minutes to spare. Thank you again so much. This was so excellent. I certainly learned some things, and I know everyone here joining us has learned some things, and you've been so gracious with your time and answering of questions, and I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, and hopefully I'll be able to speak to more of you or see you at some point. So thank you so much.
Well, lots of thank yous in the chat, and Katerina, who I know you love, has mentioned that you are an amazing example of how we could express our passion, and that she can feel your passion in every word.
Ah, thank you. That means a lot. Thanks.
Yeah, so we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Camilla. Looking forward to the next time I get to speak to you. And thanks for setting everyone some homework. You've done my job for me. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.